Hello, horror lovers. Welcome to the chilling world of Mr. Haunt. Please subscribe. It's our biggest motivation to keep bringing you spine-tingling stories. Let us know in the comments which city you're listening from. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Now, let's get into the stories. One evening I was dizzy. I don't know why. Maybe the heat. Maybe the way the wind kept circling my head like something alive. I'd just come home from work, bartending in a little dive on the outskirts of Townsend, Tennessee. One of those towns where the gas station is the only place open past 8 and people still whisper about curses. My shift ended at midnight, and I was driving the back way home, through thick trees and winding roads near the edge of the national park, when I first saw him, standing in the middle of the road. No shirt, bare feet, and his eyes were glowing. Not a metaphor, not like headlights. They glowed. A dull, unnatural amber. I slammed on the brakes. The old truck skidded, kicking up dust and gravel, but stopped just short of hitting him. He didn't flinch, didn't even move, just stared. I yelled out the window, "Hey, are you hurt?" He didn't answer, just turned and walked into the woods. And even though I told myself to keep driving, I followed him. Something was wrong. Deep in my gut, I knew it. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped into the trees. The air was cooler there, too cool for late August. And quiet, unnaturally quiet. I followed his footprints, bare, narrow, oddly spaced. Then I found the clearing, and the bones, animal bones, piles of them. Some gnawed clean, others cracked open. There were feathers, too, fur, something's spine hanging from a low branch like a wind chime. Then I saw him again. He was crouched at the edge of the clearing, picking at something in his hand, a deer leg, fresh. His mouth was stained red, and when he looked at me, his teeth were wrong, too long, too sharped out like little knives jammed into his gums. And that's when I realized he wasn't a boy. Not really, not anymore. I ran, didn't look back, didn't stop until I was behind the wheel, slamming the door and spinning tires all the way home. But that night, I couldn't sleep, because every time I shut my eyes, I saw those glowing amber orbs, and those teeth. The next day, I told myself it was a trick of the light. Maybe drugs, maybe just some messed up kid living off the grid. But I couldn't shake the feeling in my chest that this wasn't over. And it WASN single quotes. 3 days later, someone went missing, a hiker from out of town. They found his campsite torn apart, blood everywhere. No body. A week later, a dog was found skinned, but not eaten, like something had peeled it to see what was underneath. Locals whispered about mountain lions, but I remembered those teeth. Then, he came back, not in the woods. To my window it was around 2:30 a.m. I'd left it cracked to let in the breeze, and I woke up because I heard breathing, deep, wet, and when I opened my eyes, he was crouched on the WINDOWSILL, smiling. His hair had grown longer, darker. His limbs looked stretched, joints bent the wrong way, and his eyes still glowed. "You saw me," he said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in years. "You followed, so now you know. And knowing means you belong." Then he leaped backward, into the night. I called the police. They didn't find anything. No footprints. No sign of forced entry. Just claw marks on my windowsill. Too high up for any person to reach. That was the beginning. Every week after that, something died near my house. A cat, a goat, then a man who lived 2 roads over. The paper said he had a heart attack, but everyone knew his door had been ripped off its hinges, and every time something died, I'd find hair in the grass dark, coarse, like a wolf's but longer. I started researching, and what I found scared me more than the thing itself. Stories from the Smokies, going back 150 years, about a boy who vanished on a full moon hike and came back wrong. Tall tales about a creature that shifted shape but kept its eyes amber, always amber. Few even mentioned the clearing of bones. I tried to leave town, packed my truck, drove west, but I never made it past the county line. The road washed out. My engine died. My phone went dead, and that night, I saw him again, standing on the road, smiling like he was hurting me. Back home, I boarded up the windows, slept with a shotgun beside the bed, but he never came in. He didn't need to, because he was already inside. Me, I felt it, the dizziness, the cravings, the way my hands ached. Every time the moon rose full, I was becoming like him, and he was watching waiting. One night, I snapped. Drove to the clearing with a can of gasoline. I torched the bones, the trees, everything. I screamed into the smoke, and he appeared, not crouched, not hiding, standing tall, almost human, but not quite. He didn't stop me, didn't speak, just stared, until the fire died down. Then he turned and vanished. The killings stopped after that, but I didn't feel better, because now, I wake up with blood under my nails, with claw marks on my walls, with dreams of running through trees on 4 legs. And I know he didn't curse me. He awakened me, and one day soon, I'll do the same to someone else. When I was young, I thought monsters lived only in stories. My grandpa used to tell me tales by the fire, his voice low, like someone might overhear. Stories about the walker in the pines, the beast of the hollow, the man with the bone mouth. They all sounded different, but the endings were always the same. Someone went missing, and nobody ever found the body. I was 10 when I saw it for the first time. It was summer, and we were staying at my grandparents' cabin in Bear Hollow, deep in the woods of North Carolina. No neighbors for miles, no cell reception, just trees, and the smell of pine and damp soil. My grandpa had been quiet that week, kept watching the tree line. Then one night, we heard the howling, not like a coyote, not like a dog, longer, deeper, carried by the wind like it was looking for something. Grandpa stood up, walked to the fireplace, and started pulling out old rusted chains. "Get inside the cellar," he told us. Now, we thought he was joking, until we saw the look in his eyes. That kind of look people get when they've already seen the end of something. We spent the whole night locked in the root cellar. No lights, just the stink of earth and onions, and above us footsteps heavy, dragging. Something sniffed at the door. I swear I heard it breathing. Heard the wood creak like it was leaning its full weight on it. Then came the scratching, slow at first, then furious, like it was trying to claw straight through. We held our breath. Then, just before dawn, it stopped. When we came out, the porch was torn apart, deep gouges in the wood. The nails had been chewed, not pulled, and in the dirt just beyond the steps, we found paw prints the size of dinner plates, but they weren't dog prints. They had toes. Years passed. Grandpa died. We stopped going to the cabin. But I never forgot that sound, the howl, long and lonely, like it was mourning something. I thought maybe I'd imagined it, until I went back. I was 28, working for a documentary crew, filming legends of the Smokies ghosts, black bears, cryptids. I remembered Bear Hollow, thought it would make a good segment. The cabin was still there, dusty, rotten, forgotten, but the chains were still beside the fireplace, and so was the trapdoor to the root cellar. The first night, it was quiet, too quiet. The woods felt off, like everything was holding its breath. And just after midnight, we heard the howl, same as before, exactly the same. The rest of the crew thought it was a wolf, but there are no wolves left in that part of the state. Not naturally. The second night, our cameras picked up movement in the trees. A figure, tall, hunched, moving on 2 legs, but with the speed of something on 4, and then our generator died. We lit lanterns, huddled in the cabin, and something began, circling the clearing, snapping branches, pacing. Then it started talking, not full words, just sounds, trying to imitate us here. Goo, out, over and over, mocking. Then it scratched the door. I saw its face through the window. Not a wolf. Not a man. Both. Its snout was long, but its mouth opened too wide, wider than any animal. Rows of teeth, some broken, some filed down 2 points. And its eyes. They were green. Human green, like someone was still in there watching, suffering. One of the crew, Jenna, ran. It followed. We heard her scream about 100 yards into the trees. Then, nothing, just the sound of chewing. We tried to leave at dawn. The truck wouldn't start, no gas, and all the tires were slashed, not knifed, clawed. We survived that day, barely boarded up the cabin, stayed in the cellar. But every hour, we heard it outside, pacing, breathing, talking. Like it was learning, adapting. We lost 2 more by the end of the week. One disappeared on a bathroom trip. Another followed a sound he thought was Jenna calling for help. Neither came back. Just bones left in the fire pit the next morning, arranged like a warning. On the final night, it came through the roof, crashing through like it weighed 300 pounds. Wood splintered, lanterns exploded, and I got a glimpse of it in the smoke. It was grinning, not angry, happy it lived for this. The chaos, the fear. I ran, didn't look back, sprinted through the trees until I found the old ranger road, collapsed there, bloody, sobbing. A week later, they found me. I was the only one left. They blamed a bear attack, said I was traumatized. They never found the bodies, never found the cabin, just claw marks on the trees, 12 feet high. I live in a city now, concrete everywhere, but I don't go out on full moons, not even to the balcony, because sometimes, just past midnight, I still hear that howl, and sometimes, I swear I can hear it say my name. I was 17 when it happened to me. That was the summer I worked for the county trail crew, digging drainage ditches, clearing brush, rerouting switchbacks through the Appalachians. It was brutal work. Long days under the sun, your hands blistered, and back bent before noon. But I loved it. It was honest, quiet, far from home, and far from him. My dad had a temper, the kind that shows up quiet, with fists instead of words. So when I landed that summer job, I practically sprinted out the door. The ranger station set us up in cabins, old bunkhouses at a retired scout camp up near Huckleberry Ridge. No cell signal, no electricity except in the mess hall. Just us, the trees, and the mountains breathing all around us. I was the youngest of the crew, but I didn't mind. At night, the older guys smoked and told stories, and I'd sit at the edge of the fire, just listening. That's where I first heard the name, Gatlin Jack. They said he was a wild man, lived in the woods since before the war. Used to walk on 2 legs, but now ran on 4. That he had yellow eyes, could smell your blood from a mile away, and only came out when the moon was full. They said Gatlin Jack was the last werewolf in the Smokies. I laughed. We all did. Campfire stories to scare the new kid. But that name, it stayed with me, especially when I started hearing things at night. It began with howling, not constant, not close, but sharp, sudden, like something was announcing itself from the top of the ridge. Then we started finding things on the trail. Bones, hair, a deer torn in half and left draped over a boulder, like a warning. The older guys said it was just coyotes or a sick bear, but I saw their eyes. They were scared. One morning I found footprints outside my cabin. Human footprints, barefoot but wrong. Too wide, toes too long, and in the center, deep claw marks in the soil. I told the foreman. He brushed me off. Said I'd been listening to too many ghost stories. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Something was moving outside. I could hear it breathing. Slow, wet, like it had lungs too big for its body. And then it scratched the wall. Not a knock. Not an accident. A long, deliberate clawing dot, like it wanted me to know it was there. The next morning, one of the crew, Mitch, was missing. He'd gone to the outhouse and never come back. We searched all day. Nothing, just his boots. Still tied, sitting neatly on the path like someone had undressed him carefully. The rangers blamed it on a cougar, but we all knew better, especially me, because in the dirt beside those boots, I saw paw prints, enormous, deep, and alongside them, human toes. That night, I didn't sleep. Sat up with a knife, heart pounding, watching shadows move across the cabin walls. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps. Not animal, bipedal, coming closer. Then a hand, if you could call it that, slammed against the window. 5 fingers, each tipped with a black, curved claw, and a face leaned in. Too long, covered in patchy gray fur, eyes like dying stars, and a smile. It was grinning, like it recognized me. I don't remember screaming, just waking up outside in the dirt, naked, bloody, with fur in my mouth. They found me the next day, 2 miles from camp. I said I didn't know what happened. They said I was lucky, but I knew the truth. I'd been touched by it, marked. After that, I changed. The woods felt different. I could hear things I shouldn't. Smell water underground, sense when someone was behind me, before they even moved. And once a month, when the moon grew full, I felt my bones ache. I didn't turn, not fully, but I felt him in me. Gatlin. Jack. The thing that smiled. The thing that wanted to pull me into the forest forever. I didn't let him. I quit the crew, left the mountains, never went back. But I still feel it sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, when I hear howling echo across the hills. He's waiting, watching, because once you hear the call, you never really leave the pack. One night something happened, which I cannot forget. It was February, cold. The kind of cold that settles in your bones and doesn't leave, no matter how many layers you wear. I was up in northern Minnesota, working a seasonal job at a wildlife rehabilitation center near the edge of the Superior National Forest. We had a few wolves recovering from injuries, hit by cars, mostly. That's how I ended up on the night shift. It was just me and the animals, and the forest. I liked it that way, until I started hearing the whispers. The center was small, 5 holding pens, an office, and a trailer where I slept. Most nights were uneventful. Feed the wolves, check the cameras, record any abnormal behavior. But one morning I came out and found the east pen's latch ripped clean off, not broken, twisted like someone, or something with hands, had opened it. The wolf inside, a female named Tasha, was gone. No blood, no broken fence, just paw prints leading to the edge of the tree line, and beside them, bare footprints. Human. I told my supervisor. She laughed. Probably a local nut job, she said. Some anti-captivity protester. But I'd seen the prints. They were wrong. The toes were too long, the arch too high, and there were claw marks dug into the snow. That night, I stayed up, kept the lights off, watched the forest, and around 3:47 a.m., I saw it. At first, I thought it was a man, tall, naked, moving slow between the pines, but then it dropped to all fours. Fast, too fast, and leaped over the fence surrounding the center. I ran to the window, heart hammering. It stood near the pen, where the male wolf, Alder, had been sleeping. The wolf growled, but then he whimpered, laid down, rolled over, like he was showing submission, and the figure, the creature, it knelt, placed a hand on the wolf's snout, and whispered something. I didn't sleep that night, didn't report it. How could I? They'd say I was hallucinating from the cold, or sleep deprived, or worse, but I knew what I saw, and when I checked the camera footage the next morning, there was nothing, just static between 3:30 and 4 o'clock, like something had known how to hide from the machines. Over the next few days, more strange things happened. One wolf refused to eat, another paced constantly, staring at the trees, and I kept finding hair, gray wiry, long as a man's arm, caught in the chain links, and the howling, it changed, started coming from two directions, one from the wolves, and one deeper farther, but somehow human. I started dreaming about it. The tall figure, its eyes like silver coins. It stood in my room, just watching me breathe, and when I woke up, I could still smell it, wet fur and rot. One night, I stepped outside to clear my head. Fresh snow, quiet air, and then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting to see nothing, but there it was, 10 feet away. Not a wolf, not a man, something between. Its spine curved backward, arms long enough to drag in the snow. The fur stopped at the wrists, where long fingers ended in black claws. Its chest moved like it was breathing hard, like it was excited. I stood frozen, and then it spoke just one word. Run. I didn't. I couldn't. My body locked up, like I was being held by something inside my own skin. The creature circled me once, then stood. Its knees cracked as it rose to its full height. Easily 7 feet. It leaned in, sniffed my face, then whispered, "You're almost ready," and vanished into the woods. I packed that night, tried to leave, but the truck wouldn't start. Dead battery, no signal, and something had scratched the inside of the windshield. That was 2 years ago. I don't work there anymore. I don't sleep. Well, and when the moon is full, I hear it calling. Not in words, but in memory, in the smell of snow, in the silence between the pines, because I think it gave me something that's growing, changing me, and I don't know what I'll be the next time it snows. When I was 15, I thought monsters weren't real. That belief lasted exactly 2 weeks into December. I was living in a remote part of upstate New York, way up near the border, thick forest, icy winters, a town so small it didn't even have a real name, just a number on the highway sign. My father was a trapper, worked with fur, tanned hides, sold to whoever still wanted beaver or fox in the 2000s. He said there was money in it, but I think it was the solitude he liked more. My mom had left years before, so it was just me and him, the forest and the silence that grew heavier every year. That December, something started killing his traps. Not stealing, killing. We found a bobcat, torn in half, a raccoon with its skull caved in, not eaten, just destroyed. Bear, he muttered, even though we both knew bears hibernated weeks ago. Then one morning, we found a deer's head nailed to a pine tree outside the cabin, blood still warm, eyes wide open, but no tracks in the snow, nothing, just that head staring at our front door. That night, he loaded the rifle and told me to stay inside. He sat on the porch in full winter gear, watching the woods like they owed him money. I didn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard something whistle. Not from the trees, from the roof. Then something slid down the shingles. A clawed foot thumped on the deck, and my father's voice, usually stone cold, shouted twice. Then silence. I ran outside, barefoot, slipping on the ice, screaming his name. The rifle lay in the snow, but no blood, no sign of him, just long gouges in the wood, leading into the tree line, and on the cabin wall, a single word scratched into the siding: return. The police came, searched, found nothing. They blamed wolves. I knew better, so I waited for days, weeks, until one night, I heard him calling me from the woods, except it wasn't really him. The voice had his tone, his words, but there was something underneath it, a growl in every syllable, like his throat had changed shape. I grabbed the rifle and a lantern and followed the sound. Stupid, I know, but it was my dad, or at least, I wanted to believe it was. I tracked the voice for nearly an hour, deep into the uncut timber, where no one hunted, no one built, and that's where I found the den. It wasn't natural. A hole in the earth the size of a van, surrounded by bones, some animal, some, not Dot, and at the center, him, naked, pale, eyes, milky white, hands too long, fingers twitching. He crouched on all fours, like he didn't know how to stand anymore. When he saw me, he didn't speak. He just grinned, a slow, wide, tooth, heavy grin. Dot. And in that second, I knew that thing wasn't my father. Not anymore. It lunged, fast. I fired once, missed, dropped the lantern. Flames licked up the dry leaves and bone piles. I didn't look back, just ran. The screams behind me were not human, and they didn't stop when the forest caught fire. I made it home and locked the door, fell asleep too. The sound of something howling, not like a wolf, like a man trying not to be one. When the fire crews came, they found a burned out pit where the den had been. No remains, no body, just a torn flannel shirt with my dad's name stitched into the collar, and deep in the soot, a single claw, black as coal, sharp as glass. I buried it in the backyard, built a little cairn of rocks over it. Never told anyone, but sometimes, when the snow falls hard and the wind screams like it's alive, I swear I hear something scratching at the frozen earth, trying to come back, trying to return. I was 19 when it happened to me. It was the summer I took a job at a horse ranch outside Bozeman, Montana. Not because I loved horses, not because I needed the money. I just needed to get away. I'd dropped out of college. My girlfriend left me. My parents wouldn't speak to me after the fight. That ranch felt like the edge of the world. Someplace quiet enough to pretend I hadn't ruined everything. The owner, Jed, was this old cowboy who barely talked. Just gave you a job and expected you to do it. Muck stalls, check fences, feed the livestock, rinse and repeat. It was easy, in a hard way. And at night, when the prairie wind howled across the hills, I slept like the dead, until the scratching started. It was faint at first, like mice in the rafters, but it grew louder, deeper, like something was pacing above the barn, on the roof. One night I climbed up to check. No prints, no damage, just claw marks on the wooden slats. Not random either. They formed a kind of circle, scratched in like a ritual. I asked Jed about it. He spit in the dirt and said, "You ever hear about the Barnwood Moon?" I shook my head. He didn't smile when he said it. "You will." 3 days later, one of the horses went missing. No broken fence, no noise, just gone. We found blood near the far pasture and a hoof half buried in the mud. Jed didn't call the cops, didn't report it. He just cleaned his shotgun and said, "It's early this year." That night I saw something. Out past the fields where the tall grass dances under the wind. Something moved, not fast, not hiding, just walking toward the barn. It was upright, but hunched, like it couldn't decide what shape to be. And as the moon came up, a huge red disk on the horizon, I saw it raise its head and howl. A long, human scream twisted through an animal throat. It echoed so loud, I dropped my flashlight, and when I looked up again, it was gone. I asked Jed what it was. He poured whiskey into a tin mug and stared out the window. They don't like being called wolves, he said. They were men once. Now there's something in between. We don't call them, we don't track them, and if they come to your door, you don't invite them in. I asked how long this had been happening. He just whispered, since before we fenced the prairie. The next few days were worse, every night. Closer howls, more animals missing. One morning, the chicken coop was filled with feathers, and none of the doors were broken, like something had opened the latch. From the inside, I started sleeping with a knife. I don't even know why, like that would have helped. And then came the night of the full barnwood moon. That's what Jed called it. Said it only rose once a year. A red moon, low and heavy, that called them back. He told me not to go outside. Said if I heard voices, ignore them. If I saw someone I recognized, run. They wear your guilt like a skin, he warned. They know what you hate about yourself. That's how they get in. That night, I heard my mother's voice, soft, crying, calling my name from the pasture. Then my ex, telling me she forgave me. Then myself, whispering every secret. I tried to forget, and in the spaces between the voices, something growled. I looked out the window and saw them. 4 of them, tall, gray, covered in patches of mangled fur. Their arms hung too low. Their heads twitched. When they moved, they walked like men wearing wolves as coats, and they were dragging something behind them. Jed, bleeding, barely conscious. His face was torn open, but he was still alive. I didn't think I ran out with the shotgun, screamed. They all turned at once. Eyes like wet ash. One of them, smaller than the rest, spoke. Its voice was wrong, hollow and echoing. We're only taking what belongs to us. I pulled the trigger. It didn't even flinch. The shell tore through it, and it laughed. Then they vanished, like mist under moonlight. Jed died that night. Didn't say a word, just stared at the moon until he stopped breathing. I buried him out back, put a silver horseshoe over the grave. I left the next morning, never went back, but I know they're still out there. Every year, on the night of the barnwood moon, I stay inside, lock the doors, turn off the lights, and wait, because one day, they'll wear my face and come calling. One evening I was dizzy. It hit me suddenly, like a drop in blood pressure. One second I was driving through the Rockies on my way to visit my cousin Mason in Elk Hollow. The next I had to pull over and sit with my head between my knees. It wasn't altitude sickness. I'd been in the mountains for years. I don't know what it was. Maybe instinct. Maybe something else. Mason had invited me up to his cabin for the weekend. Said the fall colors were in full blaze, and the elk were bugling at night. Something you had to hear to believe. But when I arrived, the first thing I noticed wasn't the leaves or the wildlife. It was how quiet everything was. Too quiet. He met me at the gravel driveway, barefoot, wearing an old flannel and jeans smeared with something dark. Mud, I thought at the time. His eyes were different, yellowed, almost jaundiced, and unfocused, like he hadn't slept in days. Place gets in your head, he mumbled as he helped me unload the car. That night, after we grilled some venison, he said he'd caught fresh. I asked what he meant. You ever hear something in the woods? He said. That sounded like it was calling your name. I laughed, like a ghost. He didn't smile. like a man who forgot he used to be one. I thought he was just tired, or drinking too much again. But then the dreams started. I was back in my childhood home, walking barefoot through the hallway, only it was wrong. The lights were off, and the walls pulsed like living skin. Every door I opened led back outside to the woods, and something waited for me there. Not quite a wolf, not quite a man, just watching, waiting. I woke up to Mason screaming. I ran outside to find him on all fours in the grass, retching violently, his fingernails tearing at the dirt. He wouldn't speak to me after that, just stayed in his room, whispering things I couldn't hear. That night, I heard footsteps on the roof, and I knew they weren't his. The next day, I went hiking alone, anything to clear my head, but I didn't get far. About half a mile into the woods, I found something half buried in the undergrowth. A deer, or what was left of it. Its ribcage had been split wide, like someone pulled it apart with bare hands, and next to it, a torn piece of Mason's flannel, still warm. When I got back, he was gone. So was his truck. No note, no explanation, just claw marks on the inside of the cabin door. I should have left right then. I didn't. That night, I barricaded the windows. I barely slept. And sometime around 2 a.m., I heard it. Low breathing outside the cabin, then a single knock, followed by my name, soft, familiar. Let me in. It was Mason's voice, but it wasn't him. It repeated again. Please, I'm cold. I held the shotgun tight and didn't answer. The doorknob rattled. The breathing got heavier then. Silence. I waited until dawn to move. When I opened the door, there were footprints in the frost, barefoot, human, leading into the woods. I drove to town, reported everything to the sheriff. He just nodded, said Mason wasn't the first. Didn't ask for details, didn't seem surprised. He said the people of Elk Hollow knew what lived in the woods, that sometimes it took people, and sometimes they came back, different. I still don't know what happened to my cousin, but I haven't heard from him since, and sometimes, late at night, I'll hear a knock on my apartment window. I live on the 4th floor, but I always find the same thing the next morning: mud, claw marks, and a single word scratched into the glass. Soon. When I was young, I believed the forest behind our house was magic. My parents used to say, stay out of the woods after dark, but never explained why. So, of course, I went in anyway. At first it was innocent, building forts, pretending I was a ranger, listening to the owls. But something changed when I turned 11. That was the year I first heard it. It started one summer night. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard something howl. Not like a coyote, not even like a wolf. It was lower, almost human, twisted, like a scream caught in a snarl. The next day, our neighbor's dog went missing. Then, the week after, something got into our chicken coop. No blood, no feathers, just a broken door and silence. My dad said it was probably a raccoon. Mom didn't speak. She just lit one of her old candles and whispered something in a language I didn't recognize. We weren't a religious family, so I knew then something was wrong. That fall, I broke the rule. Followed Whitlow Creek upstream after sunset, trying to find where it turned toward the ridge. The trees got denser the deeper I went. Branches closed in like hands. I swear the air got colder with each step. And then, I found the circle. A clearing, maybe 20 feet wide, perfectly round. At its center was a mound of stones, like a grave. On top of it, bones, animal, mostly. But some looked too long to clean, and carved into the bark of the trees surrounding it were faces, dozens of them, crude, but somehow screaming. I turned to run, and that's when I saw him. He stood just inside the tree line, naked, covered in thick patchy hair, eyes glowing, faintly yellow, mouth open far too wide. His body was hunched, almost ape-like, but his feet, they were human. He didn't move, just watched. Then he grinned, and I ran. I didn't sleep for days. My mom burned sage. My dad locked all the doors. No one talked about it, but I knew they both had seen it. Too, they just didn't want to say it out loud. Years passed, I moved away, got a job, built a life far from that town. But Whitlow Creek never left me. Every now and then, I'd dream of the circle. The faces, the how. When my dad died last year, I went back. Mom was already gone, nursing home. Barely spoke. The house was just like I remembered, but the woods, they felt closer somehow, like they'd grown teeth. On the second night, I heard the howl again, just like before, only now, I understood it. It wasn't hunting, it was calling. The next day, I walked to the creek. Just to see. The trees were thicker than ever. The old trails overgrown, but the circle, still there. Fresh bones, fresh carvings, and standing at the edge was him, older, wilder, but it was the same face, and this time, he spoke. You came back. His voice was like broken glass dragged across wood. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. He stepped forward, smiling. Double quotes, you were always meant to return. I ran, again, but this time, he followed. I didn't hear him at first, just the rush of the creek, the snapping of twigs, then the breathing. Heavy, close. I made it to the house, slammed the door, locked it, but when I turned around, he was already inside. Only, it wasn't him anymore. It was me, staring at myself from the doorway, hair matted, eyes yellow, teeth too sharp. I reached for the poker by the fireplace and swung, but there was nothing there, just silence, and the faint smell of pine and blood. I left the next morning, haven't been back since, but something followed me. I see it, sometimes, in windows, in reflections. Not me, not anymore, and every night, around 2 a.m., I hear the same voice outside my apartment door. You were always meant to return. I was 28 when it happened to me. I'd just gotten divorced, quit my job in the city, and moved back to the coast where I grew up. Not to my childhood home, but a small rental cabin on the outskirts of a forgotten fishing town called Rookhaven. Most people had either died or moved out years ago. What was left were creaking docks, boarded up windows, and the ocean wind howling through salt, burned trees. It was exactly what I thought I needed. What I didn't know was that I was renting a cabin near a place the locals never talked about. I first noticed it in the way people looked at me, like I didn't belong, but not in the usual small town way. They weren't just suspicious. They were afraid for me. One old man at the grocery store pulled me aside when I asked for directions to the local trail loop. He grabbed my arm harder than he needed to and said, "Don't go up past the inlet. Not once the fog rolls in." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. A week after moving in, the fog came. It wasn't like normal coastal mist. It rolled in so thick, I couldn't see 5 feet off the porch. The world went gray. Still, like time, paused. And with it came a sound. Not the ocean, not the wind. It was breathing, heavy, rhythmic, like something sleeping just out of sight. And then it changed. Footsteps slow, deliberate, circling the cabin. I turned off the lights, peeked through the blinds, and I saw shapes. Large, hunched forms in the mist, upright, covered in patches of wet fur, heads low, but ears twitching. They didn't move like any animals I knew, and worse, they didn't act afraid of being seen. One of them stopped by the front porch and just stood there, swaying slightly. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the fog was gone, but muddy footprints remained. Not paw prints, feet long, human-like, except for the claws. I asked around town. No one would talk, except for one woman, Nellie. She was the bartender at the only open place left, the Blue Harpoon. She served me a whiskey, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You saw them, didn't you?" I nodded. She downed her own drink and leaned in. "They come through the fog. Every fall, every 7th year. Always at night. Always near the water." I asked what they were. She said nothing for a long time, then whispered, "They were us once." That night the fog returned. So did they. This time, I tried to record it, set up a motion camera outside. All it caught was static, and just before the file corrupted, a frame showed something, looking into the lens. Its face was like a man's, but stretched and wrong. The eyes glowed white, and its jaw was slack, as if unhinged. You could see rows of teeth. It wore what looked like an old fisherman's coat, shredded down the back to make room for its spine, now curved and exposed. Nellie came to my cabin the next day. She had a box of old photos, newspaper clippings, and drawings done in charcoal. They showed what she called the rook things. Creatures from the marshes, once men, now something else. Twisted by the sea, by the moon, and by blood rituals the fishermen once practiced. They used to say you could survive a bite if you didn't scream. She told me, but who can keep quiet while they're being torn apart? I planned to leave, packed everything, loaded the car. But that night, the fog came early, before sunset. I never made it to the highway. The last thing I remember was the sound of the engine stalling, then the fog swallowing the road whole, then a face in the rearview mirror. Not mine, not anymore. I woke up back in the cabin. It was 3 days later. Nellie was there, terrified. She said she'd found me lying in the marsh, clothes torn, eyes open, but unblinking. There were claw marks on my arms, but no blood, no wounds, just scars, like they'd healed overnight. Since then, I've felt it inside me, my hearing's sharper. My dreams are full of running, chasing Dot, and sometimes I wake up outside, naked, barefoot, covered in mud and seawater. I haven't told Nellie. She still checks on me still, thinks I can fight it. But I hear the breathing again now, even when the fog isn't here. I know what's coming. This fall is the next 7th year. They say you can survive the change if you don't scream. I haven't screamed yet, but I'm not sure how long I can hold it in. And if you ever visit Rookhaven, don't look into the fog, because something in there is wearing my face, and it's learning to smile. One night something happened which I cannot forget. It wasn't a full moon. It wasn't storming. It wasn't even particularly cold. But something about that night still twists in my chest when I try to sleep. I was house-sitting for my friend, Jamie. He'd just inherited an old family cabin deep in northern Michigan, a weirdly remote place nestled between 2 lakes and a thicket of forest no one ever seemed to walk through. I only agreed because I needed a break, a real one. After the anxiety attacks, the job loss, the breakup, I thought some time alone in nature would put me back together. Instead, it took me apart. Jamie gave me 2 instructions. Keep the windows closed at night, no matter what you hear. Don't use the mirror in the upstairs bedroom. I laughed, assuming it was a joke. He didn't laugh back. Don't touch it, okay? He said. There's something off about that mirror. Always has been. The first few days were quiet, almost boring. I drank coffee by the lake, read paperbacks, made dinners too big for one person. It was nice. Until the 5th night. That's when I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to the sound of scratching. It was coming from outside the window, beside the bed. I froze. The scratching wasn't random. It was methodical, like someone dragging claws in long arcs across the glass. And then came the whimpering. It sounded like a dog, but too deep, like someone mimicking an animal through gritted teeth. I didn't move. Eventually it stopped, but when I looked out in the morning, there were deep grooves in the windowsill. I told myself it was just a raccoon, or a coyote, maybe even a bear. But that night, it came back, and this time, it called my name, whispered it, soft, wrong, double quotes, Sam, not a howl, not a growl, just that broken voice through the glass. I shut every curtain, locked every door, and I slept downstairs. The next day, I couldn't shake it, the way it said my name, like it knew me. I thought of calling Jamie, but didn't. I didn't want to sound crazy. Instead, I went upstairs to the mirror. It was tall, 7 feet, carved oak frame. The glass warped at the edges, covered in a thick old sheet. I stared at it for a long time, and then, I pulled the sheet away. My reflection blinked before I did. I swear to God, I stepped back. It stepped forward. I raised my left hand. It raised its right. But the eyes, they were yellow. Not mine, not human. Then it opened its mouth, and something whispered from the glass. We never left. I threw the sheet back over it and ran downstairs. Locked the bedroom. Tried to convince myself I was dreaming, but I couldn't shake what I saw. And that night, it got worse. I woke up on the floor of the living room. No idea how I got there. The front door was open, and my feet were filthy, covered in dirt and pine needles. I'd been outside, except I don't remember going. There were prints on the porch. Mine, and beside them, another set, larger, barefoot, with claws. I finally called Jamie, told him everything. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "Did you look into the mirror?" I lied. "No." "Good," he said. "Then you still have a chance." He told me a story about his great-grandfather, who'd gone missing in those woods in 1936. How they found him weeks later, alive, but wrong. He didn't speak anymore, didn't sleep, wouldn't eat unless it was raw meat. They locked him upstairs, with that same mirror, until one day, he vanished. Right out of the room, no broken windows, no signs of escape, just footprints leading into the glass. That night, I smashed the mirror, or tried to. The glass didn't break, it just shimmered, and my reflection smiled. But I wasn't smiling. It said, "You belong here now." I left the cabin before dawn. Didn't take anything. Just drove until the trees looked unfamiliar. I haven't gone back, but sometimes, when I'm alone at home, I catch my reflection moving differently, lagging behind, tilting its head when I don't. And every time I look away, I hear that voice, just behind the glass. "We're not finished yet." When I was young, maybe 10, maybe 11, my uncle went missing. They said it was a hunting accident, that he got lost in the woods near Briar Hill, up in the northern part of the state where the pine trees grow so thick they swallow your voice. But I knew the truth, or at least part of it, because I saw what took him. My Uncle Ray wasn't like the rest of my family. He was loud, strange, too rough with his jokes, too quiet when he wasn't drinking. But he was kind to me. Always let me tag along when he went hunting, even when my dad said I was too soft for it. One fall weekend, just before Halloween, we went up to the cabin at Briar Hill. It was old, nearly falling apart. No plumbing, no power, just a fireplace and oil lanterns. I remember the way the woods looked that year, burnt orange and brown, like the trees were bleeding in slow motion. Ray kept looking over his shoulder, Said it felt like we were being followed. I thought he was messing with me, until I saw it too. We were tracking a deer late in the afternoon. Ray had his rifle. I just had a pair of binoculars and a camo jacket too big for me. We came across a clearing, and that's when we heard it. A howl, low, drawn out, like a wolf, but not quite too deep. Too human. Ray froze, whispered, "We're going back, now." I asked him why. He didn't answer, but he looked pale. We never made it back to the cabin. Something ran through the trees, just a flash of motion, too fast, too low. Ray shoved me behind a tree and pointed the rifle into the woods. I'd never heard the shot, only the scream. His scream, it was short, cut off like someone flipped a switch. I peeked around the tree and saw something, standing where Ray had been. It had his face, sort of, but wrong, longer, snout-like. The skin stretched into fur, eyes yellow and glowing. It crouched, then leaped straight into the trees like it weighed nothing. When I ran, it didn't chase me. I don't think it needed to. They found me the next morning, curled up by the old ranger tower, 6 miles from the cabin. My dad never believed my story. Said I was in shock. Said I made it up to cope. Ray was never found. Just a patch of blood and a shredded jacket. I tried to forget. I really did. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. That face. That hunger. I grew up. Moved away. Tried to build a normal life. But 2 months ago, the nightmares started again. And last week, I got a call. Ray's rifle was found, buried under a collapsed section of an old logging road. Still loaded. Still intact. And with it, a note in a Ziploc bag. It's inside me now. If this is found, don't come back. Burn what's left. It was his handwriting. Fresh, not 30 years old. I went back. I shouldn't have, but I had to know. Briar Hill was quieter than I remembered. The trees thicker, the air heavier. I brought a flashlight, a flare gun, and a GoPro. I ducked, taped to my shoulder. I found the clearing again. It hadn't changed. Still full of dead leaves. Still unnaturally quiet. And at the center, a hole. Not a grave. A den. I crouched, shone the light inside, and something breathed back at me. It shot out like a shadow with teeth. Tackled me. Screamed. Except it wasn't a scream. It was my name. Ben. It was Ray's voice, but the face, the same stretched horror from my childhood, only older now, grayer, like the thing had aged, or worn a mask for too long. I fired the flare gun into its chest. It didn't flinch, just roared, stumbled back into the hole, and vanished. I ran. I told the police. They found the den, but it had collapsed. No signs of life. No DNA. Just claw marks in the dirt. And blood. Human blood type O. Negative, same as Ray's. I don't sleep much now. The nightmares are back, but worse, because now, I hear my own voice calling from the woods. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror, my eyes flash yellow for just a second too long. I haven't told anyone, but I know it's coming. Whatever took. Ray left a piece of itself behind, and it's growing inside me, waiting for the right night, the right moon, the right hunger. If you ever hike near Briar Hill, and you hear your name whispered from the trees, don't answer, because whatever answers back might be wearing your voice. I was 23 when it happened to me. I'd just moved into my grandfather's old farmhouse after he passed. A place I barely remembered from childhood, except for the way the floorboards creaked, like they were whispering secrets. It was cheap, remote, falling apart in places. Sure, but I needed space after what happened with Claire. A breakup, an anxiety spiral, and a job layoff all rolled into one long, aching collapse of who I thought I was. So I took what little money I had and disappeared into the fields of western Pennsylvania. Thinking isolation would heal me, it didn't, because isolation is how it found me. The house sat on 15 acres of untamed land, overgrown trails, a collapsed barn, and a tool shed way out near the tree line that my grandfather always told me not to go near. Said it was full of bad memories. I figured that meant tools, rust, maybe the skeleton of some old tractor. But on the second night, I found something else, something that made me want to leave, but kept me chained to that place all the same. It was around 2 a.m. when I first heard it, a distant snapping of branches, and a deep growl that rolled across the fields like thunder trapped in a throat at first. I thought it was coyotes, or maybe a bobcat. Then the shed door slammed shut on its own, from the inside. I didn't go out there until morning, but when I did, I found claw marks, 3 long gouges, ripped across the door, too big for a dog, too clean for a raccoon, and just beneath the handle, scratched into the wood, "Stay out." It wasn't there the day before. The next few nights, things got worse. I started waking up outside, fully clothed, barefoot, freezing. No memory of leaving the bed. Once, I woke up on the porch, mud on my hands and blood under my nails. There were prints in the grass. Mine, and beside them, larger, deeper, with claws. I started keeping a journal, trying to track when I lost time, trying to prove to myself I wasn't insane. But then I found a page I didn't remember writing. The handwriting was mine, but warped, messy. It said, "The moon brings him. He is me. I am him. We are hunger." I set up cameras, motion sensors. I needed to know what was happening when I blacked out. What the footage showed made my stomach twist into a knot. I still haven't untied. It started around 1:38 a.m. I walked out to the field in my pajamas, stopped by the shed, looked up, and then I collapsed. Started convulsing, clothes toward skin, stretched, limbs broke, and reformed in impossible ways. And then I stood up different, covered in fur, eyes glowing, teeth too long for any human mouth. I watched myself, no, the thing I became, walk into the woods on 2 legs, and return an hour later, dragging something behind it, something human, shaped the footage cut out. I checked the ground. There was no blood, no drag marks, nothing, just my footprints, and something else, a second set, like hooves, burned into the soil itself. That night, I dreamed of fire, of woods screaming, of eyes watching me from behind my own eyes. I called a priest. He wouldn't come out. Said something about the land being tainted. I called the police. They came once, looked around, and told me to stop wasting their time. Then I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside, a Polaroid of me in the woods, mid-transformation. On the back, someone had written, "You're not the first." I went into the shed. I had to inside, beneath a false floorboard. I found bones, not animal, human. A stack of journals, written by my grandfather. The first entry, "It comes through blood, passed down, cursed in flesh. If you're reading this, you're next. Don't run. It follows." I've tried to fight it, tried chaining myself in the basement during full moons, but I always wake up outside, free, alone, hungry. The worst part, it feels good, like I'm more real when I'm that thing. Like the wolf is the true me, and the man is the lie. I don't go near people anymore. I live off the grid. I burn the journals, one by one, but they always come back. I've stopped trying to stop it, because some nights I look at the moon and feel happy, and I know the change is coming. Not just in me, but in the land, in others like me, because I hear them now, howling from far away, places calling me home. If you find this story, do yourself a favor. Never follow a sound into the woods. Never trust the full moon. And if you wake up with blood in your teeth, and no memory, don't look in the mirror, because what's staring back isn't you. It never was. One night something happened, which I cannot forget. It was the coldest night of the year, the kind of cold that makes your bones ache even under 5 layers. I was working a temporary gig up north, doing maintenance and supply drops for backwoods. Cabins that hadn't seen proper electricity since the 60s. It was just me and my snowmobile, coasting through a dark forest trail that twisted like an old man's spine. The snow came down like ash, silent, constant, almost sacred. I had one last delivery before I could call it a night. Cabin 6. At the edge of Glacier Ridge. Nobody lived there full-time. Some wildlife guy had rented it for a few weeks to study migration patterns, or so I'd been told. I'd never met him. But that night, I saw what was really waiting in that cabin. The trail was half blocked by fallen branches. I parked the sled and walked the last stretch. The trees were too still. No wind, no animals, just that snow, falling in vertical silence. I knocked, no answer. The door creaked open. It was unlocked. Inside, it was warm, but not lived in. No gear. No boots. No scent of food or people. Just a single journal on the table, and deep claw marks on the inside of the door frame. They looked fresh, and there was something else. A stain. Dark and sticky. Blood half frozen. I backed out slowly, but I didn't get far, because something stood at the tree line, watching me. At first I thought it was a bare dot, big, black, hunched forward, but then it moved fast. On 2 legs, I ran back to the snowmobile, the engine screaming to life under my shaking hands. It chased me, not like a predator, like something territorial, something ancient. It moved through snow like it didn't exist, like the earth made room for it. I didn't look back again until I was a mile away. Even then, I could feel it running parallel to me, keeping pace in the dark. I made it back to base, camp around midnight. Didn't tell anyone. What could I say? There's something in the woods that walks like a man and howls like a wolf. But the next day, Cabin 6 was off the route, closed for winter. The new map said. I checked. There was no record of a wildlife researcher, no permits, no name. The journal. I took it, and I read it. The entries were frantic, scattered. They started. Normal, weather notes, animal tracks, food inventory. But then they shifted. Night 6, saw something by the firewood stack. Thought it was a moose, until it smiled. Night 9, woke up with scratches down my back. Door still locked. No prints in the snow. Night 11, I saw my reflection in the window. It blinked after I did. Night 13, I think it's wearing my face now. I don't know which one of us is real. The final page simply read, full moon tonight. If I don't come back, don't look for me. Burn the cabin. I didn't go back to the cabin. But a week later, I heard that something had torn through the wildlife station 20 miles east. They said it was a wolf pack, but wolves don't walk through locked doors. They don't stand up like people. They don't whisper your name from the tree line. It's been 2 winters. I still work the trail, but I don't take night shifts anymore. And I never go near Glacier Ridge, because I know that thing is still out there, wearing the face of a man who once wrote in a journal and slowly forgot what it meant to be human. Some nights, I hear it. Long, low howls that echo between the hills, calling for someone. Sometimes I think it's calling for me, and sometimes I want to answer. I was 19 when it happened to me, too young to understand grief, old enough to know what guilt felt like. My older brother, Mason, died in a car accident that summer. He was driving home from a party. I was supposed to be with him that night, but I bailed, told him I had a headache. He drove alone, fell asleep at the wheel. They said it was instant, but I never believed that, because the last voicemail he left, he didn't sound sleepy. He sounded terrified. After the funeral, I stopped speaking to most people. My parents shipped me off to stay with my uncle in the mountains of Montana for the fall semester. They said the air would be good for me. They didn't know what else to do. He owned a hunting lodge on the edge of the forest. Remote, quiet, the kind of place where the silence doesn't calm you. It listens to you. My uncle didn't talk much either. Just handed me a set of keys and told me to stay out of the woods after dark. It wasn't long before I started hearing the howling. It wasn't like wolves on TV. It was slower, sadder almost. Broken, like something howling because it didn't remember how to speak. I thought it was my imagination, until I started having dreams of running through trees on all fours, of blood on my teeth, of Mason standing in the woods, smiling at me with eyes that weren't his. I told my uncle. He stiffened, went quiet. Then he asked me, "Did Mason ever get bit?" I didn't know what he meant. He poured 2 fingers of bourbon and stared into the fireplace, like he was looking for something hidden in the flames. He told me a story about when he was young, about something that attacked him and his brother, my dad, on a hunting trip. Something that ran on 2 legs but moved like a shadow. Something that left a mark, a curse. Something that waited inside them until the right trigger woke it up, usually trauma or grief. He said Mason had always struggled. Depression, anger issues, violent outbursts that made no sense. We all thought he was just moody. But maybe it was more than that. Maybe he was fighting something inside himself. Something he couldn't name. That night, I woke up to scratching at my window, not on it, inside it, like nails on glass, coming from within the pain. And when I looked out into the forest, Mason was there, naked, pale, shivering, smiling. His jaw hung too low. His eyes glowed, and his shadow didn't match his body. It was hunched, furry, breathing. I didn't scream. I just turned away and pulled the blankets over my head. In the morning, there were muddy footprints outside my room. Not just 1 pair, 2. One set was mine, the other, barefoot, huge 3-toed. I started blacking out, waking up deep in the woods, covered in bruises I couldn't explain. One morning, I woke up in the garage, huddled under a tarp, shivering and naked, with dirt caked in my mouth and a deer antler clenched in my hand. The full moon was 3 nights away. My uncle sat me down. He didn't say much, just handed me a bullet, silver, and said, "You'll know what to do if it happens." I didn't sleep for days. The night of the full moon, I chained myself in the cellar. Thick chains, iron cuffs, reinforced beams. I thought it would work. It didn't. The chains held for 2 hours. Then something inside me cracked, and the thing underneath my skin took over. I remember the pain, like being boiled alive inside my own skeleton. I remember the smell of hair and blood and rot. And I remember Mason. He was waiting for me in the woods, smiling, happy, like we were finally the same. We ran together, hunted, killed something I couldn't identify in the morning light. When I woke up, I was back in my bed, clean, safe, but something was missing. A piece of me gone, and in its place, something else, something awake. My uncle left that week, didn't say goodbye, just vanished. He left behind a note. We all fight it. Some lose faster than others. If you feel it winning, run somewhere you can't hurt anyone. And if you can't, end it before it ends you. I live alone now, remote cabin, miles from anyone. I leave notes for myself, chain myself up every full moon, even though it never works. Because deep down, I don't want it to. There's something beautiful about letting go, about not being human, about becoming the thing I was always afraid I might be. If you find this story, don't look for me. Don't follow the howling dot. And if you see someone standing in the woods that looks like me, it's not anymore. was 17, something happened to me that I've never told anyone. It was the summer after my junior year. I was working nights at a gas station off Highway 11, the kind of lonely stretch of road where no one stopped unless they were lost or desperate. My shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Just me, a till that barely balanced, and the glow of buzzing fluorescence. That summer, we started getting reports of missing hikers. The locals blamed bears, but bears don't peel open tents like sardine cans. Bears don't leave footprints that look almost human, and bears don't scream like people just before they vanish. It was a Tuesday night when the first one came in. Tall guy, hood up, didn't say much. He bought a single pack of raw beef from our half-broken fridge, paid in cash. No eye contact. His hands were wrong. Too long, too thin, too twitchy, and his nails jagged, black, and cracked down the middle like they'd been chewed from the inside. I watched him walk into the woods behind the station, meat in hand, and I swear to God, I heard him laugh, not like a man, like something pretending to be one. That same night, a girl came running in at 3:12 a.m., barefoot, bloody, crying. Her name was Leah. She'd been camping with her boyfriend 2 miles out. She kept saying, "It wasn't an animal. It wasn't an animal. It knew our names." I tried to call the sheriff, but the phone was dead. I gave her water, a blanket, locked the doors. She wouldn't stop shaking. I sat her in the back office and turned on the old security monitors, just to feel safer. That's when I saw it. At first it looked like a dog, big, lean, mangy. Then it stood not fully upright, just enough to know it wasn't natural. Its face wasn't a face. It was a snout stretched too far, with a mouth full of teeth that looked too human and too many. It had ears, but they twitched like antennae, and its arms. Jesus, they bent backward when it moved, like broken branches. It walked up to the front window and pressed its head against the glass. I didn't breathe. Neither did Leah. She whispered, "That's not what bit him." I turned to ask her what she meant, but she was gone. The back door was wide open, and the locks were snapped clean off, like someone, or something, had torn them from the inside. That's when I remembered her feet. She was barefoot when she arrived, but she didn't leave prints when she ran. The next night, I quit. But I didn't leave town. I started researching, not online. No one posts this stuff on real websites, but in libraries, bars, through whispered stories from truckers and old loggers, with glassy stares. The thing in the woods. It wasn't just one dot, it was a curse. Something that moved through people like a virus, passed through bites. Yes, but also through fear, through dreams, through exposure. If you saw it, if you heard it, you carried it. I started changing. At first, it was just night terrors. Then my bones started to ache, like they wanted to snap and rebuild themselves. Some nights, I woke up outside, naked, freezing, with dirt in my mouth and blood under my nails. The worst part, I liked it. I felt good when I didn't. Remember, I tried to stop it, locked myself in basements, took sleeping pills, even burned my clothes after each episode. But it wasn't enough. It's never enough once the thing under your skin starts to wake up, because it wants out, and it's patient. It waits for the next full moon. It waits for the next weak moment. It waits for someone else to see it. And when they do, it starts over. I live far from town now. No mirrors, no phone. I work nights, but not around people. Just land, woods, animals that sense what I am and flee before I get close. Some mornings, I wake up with fur in my teeth and the sound of snapping bones echoing in my dreams. But I'm still me, I think, at least for now. But if I ever stop writing these notes, if the howling ever stops completely, that means it's finally taken over. And if you find this page, don't look for me. Don't listen to the howling, because the more you hear it, the closer it gets. one night something happened, which I cannot forget. I was house sitting for a friend upstate. It was supposed to be simple. 3 nights, feed the cat, water the plants, lock up. That was it. The house sat on the edge of a national forest, backed against a long stretch of pine trees, the kind that bend in the wind like they're whispering. My friend Jenna had just moved out there and loved it for its quiet. I hated it the second I stepped out of my car. It wasn't the trees. It wasn't the silence. It was the way the air felt too. Still, like the forest was holding its breath. The first night was uneventful. I fed the cat, watched some TV, locked the doors. Then I heard footsteps on the gravel outside. Slow, measured. I looked through the blinds. Nothing. Just empty woods. But the cat hissed and ran under the bed. And I've never seen her do that. Not even once. I turned on every light in the house. Slept with a knife under the pillow. Didn't sleep much. The second night is when I saw him. I woke up around 2 a.m. No reason. Just the kind of cold sweat that yanks you awake without warning. I went to the window. There was a man standing in the trees, not moving, just watching. I couldn't make out his face, just the shape of him, tall, thin, oddly proportioned. Something about the way his arms hung too low and too straight didn't sit right with me. I blinked. He was gone. I checked the doors, locked. I checked the windows, secure. I told myself I imagined it, that maybe the shadows played tricks. Then I noticed the footprints, mud, leading to the edge of the patio, but none leading away. The third night, I didn't plan to sleep. I stayed up with the lights off, watching the woods through a pair of binoculars I found in Jenna's closet. I scanned the tree line, hour after hour, nothing. Then I saw him again, closer this time, 10 feet from the back door, still staring. His mouth was open, not wide, not shouting, just open, like it was stuck that way. I raised the binoculars again. His mouth, it wasn't normal, it wasn't flesh, it was bone. The lower jaw looked like it had been ripped off and replaced with something too long, something hollow, like an antler or a shell. And from that hollow jaw, I swear I saw something squirming. He started walking, not toward the house, but alongside it. I followed through each window until I lost sight of him at the corner. Then I heard the click of the back door, but I never unlocked it. I ran, grabbed the knife, the phone, the cat. I bolted out the front and sped down the highway without once checking the rear view. I didn't stop until I was 40 miles away. The police found the back door wide open, no signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing missing except for the cat's collar. They said maybe I imagined it. Sleep paralysis, delirium, but they didn't see what I saw. They didn't find the torn out chunk of tree bark near the patio, covered in claw marks. I started looking up. Disappearances in that area. Dozens people last seen walking into the woods. Rangers, campers, kids, all gone without a trace. A few old blogs described the hollow-jawed man, said he wasn't a ghost, wasn't a cryptid. He was a carrier, not of a disease, but of a curse that crept into your dreams, that stretched your bones when you slept, that made your mouth open wider than it should. One entry said, if you see him, you've already been marked. It'll start with your joints aching. Then your teeth will feel loose. And one day, you'll hear the trees speak your name. That's when you're his. I thought it was nonsense, until the pain started in my knees, my elbows, my jaw. I can't eat anymore without pain. My teeth feel like glass in my mouth. And at night, when I wake up suddenly, my mouth is always wide open, too wide. The inside of my throat feels raw, like something has been crawling out. I haven't left the house in weeks. The mirrors are all covered. I sleep on the floor with a belt around my head, trying to keep my jaw shut. It doesn't help. Every night, I wake up screaming with something in my throat that isn't mine. And outside the window, always just beyond the porch light, he's there, watching, waiting, for when I'm ready to join him. And the worst part is, I'm starting to understand why people follow him into the woods, because sometimes, when I look in the mirror, he doesn't look that different from me. I was 17 when it happened to me, and no matter how much I've tried to forget, I still hear its howl in my sleep. Arrow Ridge was a quiet mountain town, more trees than people, more deer than traffic. I grew up there, and we had our fair share of old folklore. You know, ghost stories, miners that vanished, lights in the woods. But the one tale everyone knew but never talked about was the Ridgeback. They said something roamed those woods every full moon, something that walked on two legs, but ran like a beast. I thought it was a joke, a spooky story to keep kids from sneaking out, until the night I saw it for myself. It was late October, cold enough to see your breath. My friend Devin and I had driven up the ridge to shoot some photos of the full moon. We had this old Nikon and big plans to submit something to the county fair. We set up just before midnight on a clearing that overlooked the valley, and that's when we heard it at first. I thought it was a coyote, but it was too low, too deep, like a growl wrapped in grief. Devin stopped adjusting the lens and looked at me. "You hear that?" I nodded. "Mountain lion." "Mountain lions don't make your bones shiver," he muttered. We laughed, but it wasn't real. The kind of laugh you do when you don't want to admit you're scared. Then we heard something crashing through the underbrush. Not a deer, something huge. Whatever it was moving fast, and it was coming toward us. Devin turned on his flashlight and swept it toward the trees. We caught a glimpse, just for a second, but that second still haunts me. It was tall, taller than a man. Its shoulders were hunched, head down, and its arms hung too low. Its eyes glowed, not red, but this awful, pale yellow, like sulfur reflecting FIRELIGHT. It saw us, and it screamed, not a howl, not a roar, a scream. Human. We ran, left everything, the camera, the tripod, even our jackets. We didn't stop until we were back in the truck, doors locked, engines sputtering because Devin was shaking too. Hard to turn the key. The sheriff didn't believe us, said it was a bear, or maybe we drank something we shouldn't have. But the next day, when we went back with my dad to get the gear, everything was gone. Even the tire tracks, like we were never there. All that remained were claw marks on a tree near the clearing, 3 deep gouges that started 10 feet up, and hair, thick, black, coarse, stuck in the bark. Devin left town the next year, joined the Navy, never came back. Me. I stayed, but I don't go up the ridge anymore. Not during a full moon, because I've heard it since. That same scream, that same sound that makes your soul feel too small to hide. And once, just once, I swear I saw something watching me from the tree line behind my house. I only saw its eyes dot yellow, unblinking, waiting. One night something happened, which I cannot forget. No matter how many times I tell myself it was just my imagination. It was late November, and I had just moved into my grandfather's old cabin in Ashwood Pines, tucked deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains. He'd left it to me after he passed, and I needed somewhere quiet to recover from a rough divorce and a layoff that had gutted my life. The cabin wasn't much. A stove that hissed, a roof that needed patching, and pipes that screamed like they were in pain. But it was mine, and it was quiet. At least, it was supposed to be. The locals in town never said much about the woods. They were friendly enough, until I mentioned where I was staying. The moment I said Ashwood Pines, their faces would tighten, like I'd just told them I buried bodies for fun. One guy, An older man named Ellis, who ran the bait shop, warned me plainly. You hear something walking outside at night, you don't open the door, no matter what. I laughed it off, assuming it was just mountain superstition, backwoods campfire stuff. But on the third night, I started hearing the footsteps. They came just after midnight, slow, deliberate, crunching across the frost-laced leaves, heavy, like whatever it was had weight to it. Not a deer, not a coyote, something bigger, and it circled the cabin. I stayed up, lights off, clutching a poker from the fireplace like it would do any good. Whatever it was, it didn't try the door. Not yet, but I swear, I could hear it breathing deep, rasping, just outside the window. The next morning, I found prints. Not boot prints. Not paws either. They were huge, almost a foot long, shaped like a man's foot, but with claws dug into the earth where toes should have been. I thought about calling someone, maybe the sheriff, but I didn't want to sound like a lunatic. Instead, I set up a motion sensor camera I found in the shed. That night I heard the footsteps again, only this time, they stopped right at my bedroom window. I didn't sleep, just waited for morning, when the sun finally came up. I grabbed the camera. The footage was only a few seconds long, but I watched them 100 times. At 2:37 a.m., something walked into frame, tall, hunched, covered in thick, matted fur. Its head was too long, like a wolf's snout, stretched over a skull. And its eyes, those godforsaken eyes, reflected the infrared light like they were made of glass. And then, just before it walked away, it looked straight into the lens, right at me. I tried, leaving that day, packed my truck, gassed up, and made it 3 miles down the dirt road before I saw the tree. A pine, easily 2 feet thick, had been pulled out of the ground and dropped across the path. No axe marks, no chainsaw, just raw, brutal force. I drove back, terrified and furious. That night, I heard the thing again, only this time, it spoke. I know how that sounds, I really do. But it said my name, in a voice that sounded like it was choking on blood and smoke. Mike Hale. And then it scratched the door. Not trying to get in, tracing something. I found it the next morning. A symbol, a kind of spiral with sharp hooks, burned into the wood like it had been seared with molten claws. I dug a pit that day behind the cabin and buried the camera. The footage, everything, burned the rest. I didn't want to prove it anymore. I wanted to forget. But forgetting doesn't work. Not when I still hear it outside the city apartment I now rent. Not when I catch the scent of wet fur in my hallway. Not when I see that same spiral, spray-painted, carved, branded, in places I know I've never told anyone about. Something followed me from Ashwood, and every full moon, it gets a little closer. One night something happened which I cannot forget. I was 26 and working as a volunteer fire lookout in the Smoke Ridge region of Washington. The station was nestled up a steep, pine-choked hillside, about an hour's drive from the nearest paved road. People romanticize the job. Peace, solitude, sunsets over endless green. And for the first few weeks, it was that. Until something else started watching the woods besides me. I was manning the tower in mid-October. Fire season had mostly passed, and I spent my days logging cloud patterns, scanning for the occasional careless camper's smoke column, and writing short fiction on a busted laptop. The nights, though, were another thing. They were cold, loud, and the forest made noises no living thing should be able to make. It began subtly. Every few nights around 2 a.m., I'd hear something heavy moving through the trees. Not a bear. This was slower, two-footed, deliberate. The kind of walking that's done with a goal. The thing was, I never saw anyone, ever. Then, One morning I found claw marks on the metal ladder leading up to my lookout, for deep gashes, as if something had tried and failed to climb up. They were fresh, sharp edges, sap stained. I radioed dispatch, asked if anyone else had reported anything weird. The reply came back slow. Careful. Keep us posted. Be safe. That's code for you're not the first. A few days later, I took my afternoon hike along a fire trail that looped behind the ridge. There were signs of something big nearby. Broken branches at shoulder height. Deep tracks, like wolf prints, but the size of a man's boot. I crouched to take a picture when the hairs on my neck prickled. Something was behind me. I turned. Slowly between two tall pines was a figure, just standing, a shape too big to be human. Gray fur, matted and patchy, clung to a gaunt, humanoid frame. Its face was long, jaw slightly open, showing teeth like old fence spikes. Its arms hung unnaturally low, fingers ending in claws so long they curled. It didn't run, didn't lunge. It just grinned, and then it turned and vanished into the brush like fog. Back at the tower, I shut every window, bolted the trapdoor, and stayed inside. That night, something howled. It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't anything I've heard before, or since. It was mournful and long, like something remembering what it used to be. Like a man's scream stretched through a wolf's throat. The sound echoed across the hills for over a minute, bouncing between ridgelines and then silence, until the scratching started. It was faint at first, just a tapping, then it grew sharper, louder, claw on wood, right beneath the floorboards. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. My gun was across the room. I never made it to it. Instead, I sat there in the dark, flashlight off, gripping a tire iron like it could save me. The thing paced. I could hear it sniffing at the trap door. It exhaled, and the sound was deep and wet, like it had blood in its lungs. Then it stopped, dead, quiet for 5 minutes. Then boom, something slammed the trap door from below. I screamed and threw myself against it, heart slamming like a drum. Whatever it was, it tried again, harder. The bolts shook, then again, then silence. It never got in, and eventually, morning came. I told the Forest Service I needed to leave for personal reasons. They didn't question it. One of the older rangers pulled me aside before I left. He said, "We don't talk about what walks up here at night. You saw it, didn't you?" I just nodded. He said one more thing before I left. Not a wolf, not a man, something between. Whatever it is, it remembers being human. That's the part that makes it dangerous. A few weeks ago, I read about a hunter who went missing near Smoke Ridge, found his camp torn apart. No blood, just deep claw marks on a steel ammo case, just like the ones on my tower. When I was 15, I saw something that twisted my understanding of what a human body could become. We had just moved to a rental house in a sleepy Montana town called Dunsfield. My dad had taken a contract job with a logging company, and since the place was remote, the company arranged housing for us. The house was old, with warped floors and a patchy yard that backed up against a line of thick forest. My room faced that tree line, and I always had a view of the dark woods, even in my dreams. It started the second week we were there. I was sitting on the back porch one afternoon, sketching trees in my notebook, when I saw a man standing at the edge of the forest. I thought he might have been a hunter. He wore a tattered flannel shirt and jeans, and even from a distance, he looked off. What struck me was his head, or rather, how it seemed to split right down the center when he tilted it. Not like a wound, more like the skin itself peeled slightly, open at the jaw, exposing the shimmer of teeth, and something glistening inside, and then it closed again, like it hadn't happened. I dropped my pencil. He saw me watching and backed into the trees without a sound. That night, I had a dream I was running barefoot through snow, even though it was September. I could hear my own panting, heavy and bestial. And I knew something was behind me, something that smelled like blood and copper and pine tar. But when I looked down at my hands in the dream, they weren't hands, they were claws. I woke up drenched in sweat. My window was open, and the curtain was flapping wildly, except I never left my window open. Outside, the backyard was still, but something had pressed through the tall grass. A trail of flattened stalks ran from the woods to directly beneath my window. I didn't tell anyone, who would have believed me. The next day my dad came home with scratches across his arm, deep ones. He said he was working a tree that had splintered. Weird in that a branch caught him. But I saw the gashes. They weren't from wood. They were parallel, clean, and too long. He seemed distant after that, slower. He stopped eating dinner with us and spent long hours sitting on the back porch in silence, staring at the woods. And then I noticed something else at night. From my window, I could hear breathing, not from inside, from the forest. Deep, deliberate breaths. Almost like something trying to mimic the sound of sleep, but not quite getting it right. One night, I stayed up until 3 a.m., and I saw him again, the man with the split face. Only this time, he was closer, right at the edge of our backyard. His head tilted, and the split opened again, far wider than before, showing rows of glistening teeth stacked like razors. But what made my stomach twist was the sound he made. It was my father's voice, calling my name. The next morning, Dad was gone. He left a note saying he needed a break and had gone to stay in a motel a few towns over, but I knew that wasn't true. The handwriting was all wrong, too slanted and jagged, and there were claw marks on the back door frame. My mom called the police. They searched the woods, found nothing. They said maybe he just needed time. I didn't sleep that night. A week later, the power went out. Windstorm. My mom lit candles, and we camped in the living room. I offered to go out to the shed to check the generator. Big mistake. I made it halfway when I heard footsteps circling the house. Not fast, deliberate. I hid behind the shed and waited, heart pounding. Then I saw him. Not Dad, not fully. His legs bent wrong at the knees. His hands dragged clawed fingers in the dirt, and his face, his human face, peeled back slowly to show the monstrous one beneath. He sniffed the air like a dog, and then he spoke. My boy, still awake. I ran. I didn't stop until I was in town. A sheriff's deputy drove me home, but no one found anything. My mom and I left the next morning. She thought my dad had gone insane. I knew better. Years passed. I grew up, moved to Portland, tried to forget. Then, 2 weeks ago, a friend from Dunsfield sent me a video, trail camera footage, a creature on 2 legs, ragged flannel, bent limbs, mouth that split down the center, and a voice, caught faintly on the audio, saying, "My boy." I was 19 when it happened to me, fresh out of high school and working part-time at a gas station just outside a little town in Colorado called Hartson's Bluff. Population maybe 300 if you count the dogs. It was the kind of place where the night got so quiet you could hear your own thoughts scream. But what I heard that summer wasn't in my head. Not entirely. My friend Travis and I used to sneak out late and hang near Miller's Ravine. It was an old dried-up creek bed bordered by thick pine and aspens, completely overgrown and forgotten by most folks. The rumor around town was that something used to live down there. Something big, with red eyes. We laughed it off. Urban legend. Nonsense. Until the night we saw them. It was July. Hot enough that even after dark, the air felt like soup. Travis picked me up around 10 p.m. We brought a 6-pack and a flashlight and hiked out to the ravine like we had dozens of times before. The path was familiar, worn into the landscape by years of teenage rebellion. We were halfway through our drinks when I noticed something. The woods were too quiet, like they were waiting. Travis noticed it too. "Dude, where are the crickets?" he whispered. I shrugged. Then we heard it. A low growl. Not close, but not far enough either. It vibrated in my chest, like standing next to a diesel engine. Travis killed the flashlight. "Bear," he said. "No bear makes a sound like that." And then we saw the eyes. Two bright red dots, like glowing coals, staring at us from the tree line. High, higher than any normal animal. They didn't blink, didn't move. I could feel Travis's breath catch beside me. Then the eyes dropped, as if whatever it was went down on all fours. The grass rustled, branches creaked. Something huge was coming toward us. We ran. I don't remember much about the sprint back. Just the crashing behind us, the way it moved faster than anything that size should. It didn't run in straight lines. It darted side to side, like a predator, corralling its prey. And it breathed, harsh, ragged, hungry. We reached the truck. Travis fumbled the keys. I looked back. It was standing just beyond the trail, at the edge of the woods. A werewolf. There's no other way to describe it. 7, maybe 8 feet tall. Muscles like stone under dark fur. Arms too long. Claws hanging past its knees. And a face that was almost human. That was the worst part. Like someone had been twisted into a shape nature never meant. It just stared at us. Then, it smiled, showed a row of jagged yellow teeth. We got out of there. I never went back. Weeks passed. I barely slept. Travis tried pretending it hadn't happened. But he was different too. Jumpy, drinking more. Then, one night, he didn't show up for work. I called. No answer. I drove to his house. His mom was hysterical. Bed untouched, back door open. Cops thought he ran off. But I knew better. A month later, I went back to Miller's Ravine. I had to know. I brought a rifle, a flashlight, and a bottle of cheap whiskey. I sat in the same spot. We drank that night and waited. Hours passed. The crickets never came back. Then I heard it. Movement, slow, deliberate. I turned the flashlight toward the noise. Red eyes. Closer this time, but it didn't lunge. It didn't growl. It stood there. And when it stepped into the light, my blood froze. It was Travis Stott, or what was left of him. The thing had his eyes. His hair. But his mouth was wrong. His limbs stretched. His clothes torn and barely hanging from his twisted body. He looked at me and cocked his head, confused, like he was trying to remember something. I couldn't move. He snarled, then turned, and ran back into the woods. I still see him sometimes, in dreams, in the corner of my vision when I drive by the ravine, always watching, never close enough to touch. But I know what he is now, and I know the worst part. He's not the only one. One night something happened which I cannot forget. It was late September, just as the last warmth of summer had started giving way to Colorado's unpredictable autumn chill. I had taken a solo hiking trip through a sparsely visited stretch of San Juan National Forest, a little break before starting my new teaching job. I had no way of knowing what I'd walk into, or that I'd walk out, changed. I parked my Subaru at the trailhead around noon. By sunset, I had made it to a small clearing deep in the woods, exactly where I wanted to be. No cell reception, no traffic, just the crackle of firewood and my tent pitched beneath a sliver of moon. I was eating dinner when I heard it. Howling. Not a coyote, not a wolf. It sounded human, but not quite. It came from deeper in the woods. Long, painful, and broken. Like someone crying out through clenched teeth. Then silence. I froze mid-bite. After a minute, I convinced myself it had to be some poor hiker, playing around, or hurt. But the sound didn't sit right. It was too close, and yet didn't echo the way normal sound does in the forest. It was like it was inside the trees themselves. Still, I tried to shake it off, climbed into my sleeping bag, zipped up the tent, but I didn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard snapping twigs, not small ones, big ones, like something heavy stepping through the brush. I reached for the hatchet I kept beside me. There was a sniffing sound just outside my tent, wet and loud, followed by a low grunt, and then a voice, a boy's voice. "Help me, please." I held my breath. "Sir, are you in there?" the voice said again. I unzipped the flap a few inches. What I saw didn't make sense. It looked like a boy, maybe 10 or 11, pale skin, torn shirt, dirty hair sticking out in matted tufts, but his arms were too long. His eyes glowed faintly. His fingers ended in thick, black nails that looked more like claws. Then he smiled, and that smile wasn't human. I zipped the tent shut and grabbed the hatchet. "Don't go," he said. I didn't answer. Then he howled, loud and unnatural, like something trying to mimic a wolf and failing. The trees shook with it. He ran off, but I knew he'd be back. I waited for dawn and packed up without even making coffee. I made it halfway back to the car when I noticed tracks in the dirt. Not boot prints, paw prints, big ones, bigger than my hand, and among them were the boys, side by side like he walked alongside the creature. That should have been the end of it, but it WASN single quotes. 2 weeks later, I started my job teaching English at a middle school in a small town near the edge of the forest. Normal first week, until Thursday. That's when I saw him, the boy. He was in the cafeteria, standing with the other kids. Except, no one was talking to him. His clothes were clean, hair combed, but it was the same boy. Same face, same yellow-tinged eyes. He looked at me and grinned. My heart nearly stopped. I went to the front office after class and asked about the new student. The secretary blinked at me. "What new student?" I told her about the boy. She frowned, pulled up a list. "No one new registered this week," she said. I checked again the next day. He was still there, sitting in the back of the classroom, watching me, waiting that Friday. He didn't show up, but that night, I heard the howling again, right outside my house, and something was scratching at the back door. I don't sleep anymore. I moved away, changed jobs, new town, new state. But sometimes, on certain nights, I still hear that voice in the dark. "Sir, are you in there?" I was 17 when it happened to me. It was the last October I spent in West Virginia before college. I was restless back then, always running from something, though I couldn't have told you what. That fall, my best friend Danny and I decided to go on a weekend trip deep into the Monongahela forest. We'd done this before, cabin camping, no phones, no lights, no rules, but something was different that time. Something followed us in. Something didn't want us to leave the same. We found the cabin through a friend of a friend. It was supposed to be old, but solid. No electricity, but a functioning fireplace and a hand pump for water. Perfect for what we wanted. 3 days away from everything. The first day was calm. We drank cheap beer by the fire, hiked a little, talked about girls, and stupid high school drama. Just being kids, really. But that night, as we settled into our sleeping bags on opposite sides of the cabin, I heard something outside. Not an animal, not a branch, a low growl, just once, so deep it rumbled through the floorboards. I sat up. Danny was already awake. I saw his silhouette shift in the moonlight. "You hear that?" he whispered. I nodded. He got up, grabbed the axe we'd brought for splitting wood, and walked to the door. I told him not to open it. He opened it anyway. We didn't see anything at first, just darkness and fog creeping between the trees. Then we heard it, breathing, heavy, labored, and then something moved. It darted from one tree to another, too fast for us to get a clear look, but it was big, bigger than a man. I slammed the door, and we bolted it. Neither of us slept. The next morning we found huge prints in the mud around the cabin. They looked almost like wolf tracks, but too wide, too deep. Whatever it was heavy, and it had circled the cabin twice. I wanted to leave right then. Danny said we were being paranoid. It's just some local stray, he joked, though his voice shook when he said it. I agreed to stay one more night. I shouldn't have. That evening, Danny was chopping firewood when he let out a yell. When I rushed over, he was holding his arm. Blood dripped between his fingers. He told me something, ran past him, fast, and clawed him, but I hadn't heard a thing. There were no prints this time, just broken branches. We cleaned the wound, wrapped it best we could. Danny said he felt fine. He wasn't fine. He started sweating around midnight. His breathing got erratic. He thrashed in his sleeping bag, mumbling nonsense. Then, suddenly, he went quiet, too quiet. I moved closer and called his name. His eyes opened, but they weren't Danny's anymore. They glowed yellow in the dark. He sat up slowly. His body twitched, like something inside him was trying to stretch out. Bones popped. His hands curled. His breathing turned into panting. I backed away. He snarled and lunged. I barely got the cabin door shut behind me before he slammed into it, snarling like a rabid animal. I ran, no flashlight, no weapon, just me in the dark forest, heart pounding. So hard I thought it would burst. I don't know how long I ran. I lost the trail. My legs burned. My lungs gave out. Eventually, I collapsed beside a creek and passed out. When I woke up, it was dawn, and everything was quiet. I found my way back to the trailhead and flagged down a ranger. They found the cabin, empty. No Danny, no blood, nothing. Just shredded sleeping bags and claw marks on the walls. They searched for 2 days. They never found him. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo. It was taken at night, in the forest. It showed something hunched over in the trees. Something hairy, bent, eyes glowing on the back. Written in smeared black ink were the words, "It's still me. I think." I never went back to West Virginia, but I still get letters. Every October, and in each one, the handwriting gets shakier. The last one just said, "Please don't come looking. I can't promise I won't remember you." When I was young, maybe 11 or 12, I saw something out by the old cemetery on Black Hollow Road that still keeps me up at night. It was the summer of 1997, and my cousins had come to visit our little farm outside of Bracken Hollow, Kentucky. The place was remote, miles of fields and forests with an old iron-fenced cemetery on the edge of our property. My uncle always said to stay away from it after dark. "Animals get funny out there," he used to say, "and not the kind you want to meet." We thought it was just a way to keep us out of trouble, until the night we found out he was telling the truth. There were 4 of us. Me, my older brother Jared, and our cousins Laura and Ty. One night, daring each other like dumb kids do, we sneaked out after dinner and made our way through the cornfields with a flashlight and a cheap camcorder Jared had borrowed from school. The moon was huge and bright, so bright it cast shadows like daylight. When we reached the rusted cemetery gate, something felt wrong. The air got thick, not cold, but dense, like breathing underwater. The graves were overgrown, some toppled, some cracked. Vines clung to the stones like fingers. We walked in, laughing nervously, filming ourselves like it was some kind of sleepover stunt. Then we heard it, a low, rumbling growl, coming from the woods just beyond the graveyard. Probably a dog, Jared said, but his voice was thin. Ty pointed the flashlight toward the tree line, and then we saw them eyes. High off the ground, glowing in the beam like twin lanterns. Then something stood up. It had been crouching, and when it rose, it just kept rising. Its body was wide, covered in black or dark brown fur. The arms hung long, almost to its knees, and its head, God help me, looked like a wolf's, but longer, thinner, like something stretched it too far. It didn't lunge, not yet. It just watched, and then it grinned. That's what broke us. We ran. So fast we trampled half the cornfield. Jared dropped the camcorder somewhere along the way, and we didn't stop running until we got back to the barn. The adults didn't believe us, thought we made the whole thing up, but 2 days later, they found the Miller family's hunting dogs dead, torn apart like paper, and one of the graves at the cemetery, dug up. Empty, no tracks, no signs of tools, just claw marks, deep claw marks, on the headstone. My uncle pulled me aside that afternoon. You saw it, didn't you? I just nodded. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands and said something I've never told anyone until now. There's always been something in these woods. Comes out every few years. Likes the moon, hates the crosses. I asked him why no one stopped it. He looked at me with eyes like old stone. Because you can't kill what ain't really alive no more. It's been over 20 years. I left Bracken Hollow and never looked back. Until my mom passed and I had to return to sell the place. The cemetery's still there, still quiet, still waiting. And last night, I heard something howl behind the barn. It wasn't a coyote. It sounded almost human, but not quite. And I swear, I saw something with long arms and yellow eyes, watching me from the edge of the cornfield, smiling. I was 22 when it happened to me, and I haven't gone camping since. My cousin Leo had this wild idea to hike the Lantern Trail, a 14-mile loop through the backwoods of the Pacific Northwest, right at the end of October. We'd done a lot of backpacking in high school, so I figured it'd be just like old times. What made it strange from the start was that Leo wouldn't stop talking about some old legends he'd read online. Something about the trail being a cursed path, with stories going back 100 years. Missing hikers? Weird howls in the night. Supposed sightings of a creature that walked like a man but had the head of a beast. Classic internet folklore, I thought. Still, I remember laughing and saying, if I get eaten by a werewolf, you owe my mom an apology. I didn't realize then that I wasn't joking. We hiked all afternoon and made camp near a shallow stream. The trees were thick, tall enough to block most of the starlight. Leo kept pointing out claw marks on trees and strange broken branches. I'm telling you, he said, half grinning, people vanish out here. The night was quiet at first. Too quiet. No birds, no bugs, just the wind whispering through the pines. And then we heard it. A long guttural howl, not high-pitched, like a coyote, deep and chesty. Like something massive, trying to mimic a wolf. We both froze. Leo chuckled nervously. Probably just a moose. No moose I've ever heard walks on 2 legs, I muttered. Around 2 a.m., I woke. To the sound of movement, slow, heavy footsteps, outside the tent. Something brushing against the nylon, breathing. I didn't dare move, but Leo, always the fearless one, unzipped the tent an inch to peek out. He didn't scream, he just whispered, "Don't make a sound." Then I heard it, A snuffling sound, like a dog trying to sniff through fabric. Something wet pressed against the tent wall behind me. And then, a growl. Low. Close. So close I felt it in my chest. Leo reached into his backpack for his flashlight and flipped it on. That was a mistake. The beam cut through the dark, hitting something tall and broad just outside. It flinched at the light, rearing back, but not running. Its eyes caught the beam and flared, gold and red at once. It didn't look like a bear, too long, too upright. And its snout, it looked stretched over a skull, too big for its head. It opened its mouth and let out this rattling hiss that didn't belong in the throat of anything alive. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. Come morning, we found prints around the tent. Huge clawed tracks, shaped almost like a man's, but longer. Warped. We packed in 10 minutes flat and hiked the remaining miles in record time. When we got back to Leo's Jeep at the trailhead, something was waiting for us. A dead elk, gutted, but not eaten. Its insides arranged in a perfect spiral on the ground. The only reason I remember that detail so vividly is because it looked intentional, like someone, or something, left it there for us. A few months later, Leo called me. He hadn't been sleeping, said he kept hearing howls outside his apartment in Oregon City. Said he was having dreams of yellow eyes and twisting woods and his own voice calling for help. Only it wasn't him speaking. 2 weeks later, he went missing. They found his Jeep parked at the Lantern trailhead. The spiral was scratched into the windshield. It's been 6 years now. I've moved 3 times. I keep my windows locked, even on hot nights. I don't go outside when the moon is full, but I still hear the howl sometimes. And sometimes, right before I fall asleep, I feel something watching me from the corner of my room, waiting.